Good evening. Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the 2017 primary election in Wyandotte County. I'm Merle Bland with Business West, one of the co-sponsors of the forum along with Kansas City, Kansas Community College. Other co-sponsors are the Central Avenue Betterment Association, represented by Edgar Galicius. Edgar, if you could wave. And the Historic Northeast Midtown Association, represented by Elnora Jefferson. Elnora? And Mary Rupert with the Wyandotte Daily Online will be the third member of the panel that will ask the questions. Let me explain the format for tonight. Each candidate for mayor, in alphabetical order, will have 3 minutes for opening and introductory remarks. Then the panelists will then ask questions of the candidates starting in reverse alphabetical order. If the candidate has sent a representative, that person only will be able to present opening remarks. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to each of the panelists' questions. Candidates are urged to stick to the issues. This is not a debate. Now for introductory remarks. We first call on David Albee. David?
Thank you. I think it might be appropriate for me just to take an opportunity to introduce myself to you. So I am a lifelong Dot with some stints out of town for work and study. My family, frankly, has been in Wyandotte County since 1857 on my mom's side, 1865 on my father's side. My professional life, I worked in Marin County, California as director of the Student Support Program, which was a program for at-risk students at risk of failing out of high school. My wife and I actually volunteered at the same time on Sundays at the Alameda County Juvenile Detention Center. In fact, we met in the Alameda County Juvenile Detention Center. We were volunteers there. I came back to Kansas. We came back to Kansas because we could not afford to live in California, and we preferred Wyandotte County. I've worked at Rockhurst High School since 1994. For 19 years, I served as the Dean of Students, that I handled discipline and attendance for over 1,000 boys for 19 years. 4 years ago, I was asked to take on a new position at Rockhurst and called the Assistant Principal for Faculty Formation and Professional Development. And in fact, because I had committed to take on that position, when Mayor Reardon decided not to run, I was looking at running for mayor. In fact, I've been looking at for 12 years at running for mayor, but decided since I'd already made the commitment to Rockhurst to take on and start that new position, develop that new professional development, I felt an obligation to fulfill that promise. I've been on the Board of Public Utilities since 2009. I have served previously on the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Unified Government. As a member of the board, I have been on the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee of the Unified Government, and I've also served on various community organizations. I guess I would like to sum up my professional career when my approach in all my work is simply to try and make things better, to engage the people I work with, to engage the people I work for in a meaningful conversation about what we must do to make things better. I like to ask a lot of questions because I don't pretend to know everything. And as I learn, I become committed to what I find out to be the best practice. And so I am always committed to passionate and honest and smart government. It is our responsibility to provide good service with the least burdens on the people of our county. This county will grow only insofar as we engage our community in the conversation about what is going to make us better and commit to that day in and day out for years. It has taken us a long time, probably 60 or 70 years, to get to the situation we're in, but we will get out of it within 20 years if we commit to it. Thank you.
I see David Haley just walked in. If you could come up and take a seat, Senator. Senator, you will have 3 minutes to make introductory remarks.
At this time,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Bland. Thank each of you who have made the time to be here and to hear this discussion. As you know, in just a few short days, we will be making a decision as to what direction our county will go. During the course of our phenomenal growth, I've been pleased to be a part of the discussion, first in the legislature that has provided the STAR bond opportunity that is now bearing fruit. The fruit that's being born has been the topic of our budget for 2 years. Now that that fruit, the resources are coming back in, we look at each of us that are here, each of whom want to lead our county, and we talk about, and we'll be talking about, do we continue down the path of tax or mill reduction, or do we embrace the balance between that and the redevelopment of many of our blighted and much of our historic areas throughout this county? I am David Haley. I've been pleased to be in the legislature representing Wyandotte County for 22 years. I believe experience does count. You will hear those who say that new faces should come in, but after the experience nationally with people who we've never known to come in and to lead us in an executive position, I think we need to carefully evaluate what that experience does bring and to temper it with a genuine responsibility to all parts of our county to lift us as we grow. And that's a serious contention right now as we look at the next 2 weeks. I do have my experience, but I also have a passion for this county and the people here in my native county. Our website is growwyco.com. But above and beyond that, our commitment after the election is to continue to be not just the campaign promises that we make, but earnestly involved across the board in this, our Wyandotte County. I have no need of additional, beyond resume, I have no need of additional shelter. I'm comfortable whether 2 or 200 in the company of all Wyandotte Countyans without expensive security details to follow me everywhere. As your mayor, you can and will count on David Haley to be earnestly accessible and to, most importantly, hear what we can do to offset the fees of our beloved BPU, which go to the city, and to balance and to temper the UG's mill levy, so again, that it raises the stakes of our main corridors in all parts of our county. Thank you for being here and for allowing us to be a part of this crucial debate.
Thank you, Senator. Now, Mark Holland, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I also want to thank everyone for being here tonight, also for taking the time out of your evening to come out and to be a part of the issues, and also for those who will watch this on tape delay sometime in the future. It is important that people have an opportunity to see and hear the different visions of our county that we have, so that the voters can make an informed choice. I'm 4th generation Wyandotte County. I'm a 3rd generation United Methodist pastor here. I've been back in the community after school since 1999, and was first elected to the commission in 2007, served 4 years, was reelected in 2011, and then was elected mayor in 2013. My vision as mayor is really to have a community-driven agenda. So when we had the opportunity with the payoff of the STAR bonds, that $12 million, which is a return on investment that this community made looking ahead 15 years ago, when we made that commitment, we needed to come back to the community to hear, how is it that you would like us to invest that? That's this community's money. That's the citizens' money coming back after a long time of waiting for an investment to pay off. And I went out and did 8 different listening tours in our community. Over 700 citizens came out to give feedback in a small group setting about how we should invest that money, and gave clear direction to me and to the commission. We also did a community survey that reached out to the general public as well. And we took that data and came back and crafted a budget last year that hit the primary focal points of the listening tour and the survey. And that that said clearly, we want tax reduction. And to that point, last year we reduced the tax on the Kansas City, Kansas side 2 mills. We reduced another 2 mills this year, which is a total of $4 million. 4 of the $12 million, a full third of that money we invested directly into tax reduction. The balance of that we've invested in other services that the community feels are important. Public safety, police, fire, and sheriff. Our top priority has always been public safety and always will. And we have continued to invest in those entities. We've also invested in better streets. You've seen what happened when we invested in State Avenue. Other businesses came and invested alongside. When we build world-class infrastructure, we know that others will invest as well. That's why we're committed to a new $25 million project on Leavenworth Road that's going to bring that road up to the same caliber as Parallel and State, though only 2-lane. The investment in our community, in our parks, in our trails, in the quality of life amenities that people have come to expect. We need to balance that tax relief, which we need to continue to do in a deliberate manner, and we need to continue to invest in our infrastructure, not the least of which are our people. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking with you through the balance of the evening.
Keith Jordan, you have 3 minutes.
I thought Johnson had like 30 seconds for a second.
Okay.
It's like, Jesus. As it, my name is Keith Jordan, and well, I know that very few of you know who I am. I am not a professional politician like everyone else surrounding me right here. I am a member of the community. I'm a person who's wanting to take the city back for the community, because that's the one thing that's been lost, is the community. Okay, we've become a business, the county has. A little bit about me. For 40 years, I've lived in Wyandotte County. I'm a graduate of Turner High School. My family I have raised, and my son is a graduate of Turner High School. He is also a star athlete, at least he was, until he decided to go into wildlife, and he's working to become a wildlife manager and that. Both me and him, we're both Masons. I'm also a Shriner. I believe in giving back to the community every single day. I'm out there at different parks with harvesters passing out lunches to kids who will not get to have lunch if it wasn't during the summer because school's out. That's how I believe. I believe that it's the people. We've forgotten the people. It's great that when the Legends came in, because it did bring some money in and it started revitalizing Kansas City, but now we're at the next phase. We keep trying to still push and push and push over there. The next phase is the people. We need to take care of our citizens. We need to build grocery stores. We need to build the things that they're asking for. We need to make sure that safety is a priority. If we want people to stay after they graduate from high school, instead of moving out of the county or to move into the county or even to bring their business into the county, we need to make sure that, one, they feel safe, because if they don't feel safe, they're not going to want to stay. And we also got to make sure that they have the amenities that every human being deserves. And that is a nice place to live, a nice grocery stores and shopping stuff like that. And also just around them, we need to get rid of. We got areas where there's trash piling up in some of our streets. Okay, we need to clean some of these areas up. I've had people send me pictures, and these are just regular neighborhoods. If we just let some stuff go, we got to clean it up. And that is my beliefs in why I should be the mayor, is because I am tired of basically the little guy being forgotten about. The everyday citizen who's basically just ignored. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that feel like that also. That's why, as I said, it's time for someone who's not a professional politician to take the reins back and to run the city the way that the people want the city to be ran. Thank you.
Now, Janice Witt, you have 3 minutes for introductory remarks.
The problems are clear. I've spent the last 23 years of my life trying to help dispel some of those problems. I don't need to tell you about the problems because you live them. I've been providing groceries and assistance to this community for 23 years because they have nowhere to go, no options. Many of you out there tonight, I know I invited a bunch of you, and I see some of you out there who are friends and family, and you've watched as my husband and I and other members of this community dig deep into our pockets to ensure that up to 5,000 people that come through our lines per month have groceries. We have a lot to do in Wyandotte County, but this is why we know that we all are paying too many taxes. People are having to choose between their basic needs and paying their taxes, basic needs and paying their BPU. They're having to decide whether to purchase medicine or food for their children, or head straight to the food line to lose their dignity by asking for food publicly. I believe that what Wyandotte County needs is a change from the old boy ways of bullying and being told what we want, who we are, what we are worth, and then robbed at the tax and the BPU doors. We in Wyandotte County need a decrease in tax burdens and an uplifting of people. We need to ensure access to clean water, food, and a livable environment. We need positive social engagement and respect given and received. We need a rebrand in Wyandotte County. We need enough police in the northeast and east of 635 so that they can do their jobs safely and securely. Cameras on each officer would be great, but what good have the cameras done for the young men who have been shot in the past? It was recorded. How about we take some stress and fear off of our officers, our good officers, by giving them appropriate backup and manpower in a timely manner? Each district is different, with different needs. Northeast needs attention, seriously. They need some care. They need grocery stores. There used to be a neighborhood grocer all over in the Northeast. I bet if you think about it, you all could name some. I'm not saying that that is the only solution, but I'm saying that basic food and clean water is a great place to start for any district in Wyandotte County. Our leadership holds meetings at noon. This prevents us from coming, those of us who are working to try and pay our bills. Piper has no parks, Bonner and Edwardsville virtually no city services. It's my goal to ensure that everyone in this community, no matter where they are met with some concern and some care for their basic needs. My name is Janice Witt. Vote Witt on August 1st.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll move to the questions from the panelists. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to each question. And we'll start with Mary Rupert from the Wyandotte Daily, who will ask a question of the candidates, and she will start with Janice Witt.
Thank you. Please tell us how you differ from the other candidates on the issues.
Most important for me is to ensure that people are heard, that their voices are heard. So right out of the box, I tell you that I care. I don't want to address whether any other candidate cares or not, but when BPU turns off utilities for 19 cents left on a bill, I don't feel care in that. I don't see care in that. When you have $250,000 a year security costs, $1 million in a term coming out of the taxpayers' pockets, that does not tell me that you care. That tells me that you are separate and above the people that you are supposed to represent. For long periods of time, some of these politicians have been on the state level, or there has been no change in our position. My position in Wyandotte County, I'm not a politician, but I have changed things in Wyandotte County. I feed people, real people. They're not ghosts, they're real. They're simply afraid to lift their heads. I believe that I'm different because I am the voice of the people. I am certainly the voice of the people who have sent me. And I will stand and I will fight for them to the bloody death.
Okay, thank you. Keith Jordan, your response?
Well, mine is close to like what Janice said. I am different because, as I said, I'm not a professional at this either. If you drive around, how many Jordan signs do you see? Very few. How many times have you seen meet and greets and that stuff, or come on out, meet the candidate, and maybe donate to his fund, his campaign, help fund it? Zero. all I have done, spending maybe about $450 right now, I've got a trailer that I pull behind my truck that has my name on it, and I've driven every single street in this county, all the way to Piper, Bonner, Edwardsville, all throughout KCK, downtown KCK, every single street. I've stopped, I've shook hands and talked to people, answered questions from people who wanted to know what I stood for. I don't have any allegiance to anybody but the people who vote for me. Thank you.
Mark Holland.
Did you give us a time on the responses? Is there a time limit on the responses?
Not really.
Right on.
Shouldn't tell a preacher that, should I?
Uh-oh.
You know, I think the comparison of the other candidates will come in the eyes of the viewers. I don't have anything negative to say about any of my colleagues who are running here today. I think we're all Wyandotte County citizens who want the best for our community, and we all have differing views about how best to accomplish that. So I can only tell you the things that are important to me. If we have the highest taxes in the region, which we do, we have to address it. And really, there's really four ways we're going to address it. And I think this is what my candidacy is focused on, and my leadership at the city has been focused on. If we're going to lower taxes, we have to have a plan, because it's not going to happen on its own. There's really a four-part piece. One, I already talked about at the beginning with the introduction of taking the STAR bonds and just shifting the burden from property taxes to sales tax. And we shifted $4 million of that. What you're not going to see is the irresponsible tax cuts we saw at the state, where they just slashed taxes and then panicked and the whole budget was upside down. We need to be responsible, we need to be thoughtful, we need to be thorough. So I'm going to make a thorough commitment to ongoing tax relief. Since the unification of this government 20 years ago, and this is the 20th anniversary of that, we have seen a reduction overall of 19% of the tax rate in Wyandotte County. If not for unification, imagine our taxes almost 20% higher. The commitment we've made the last 2 years to continue to lower that with the payoff of the STAR bonds is important, and it has to continue. The second thing we need to do is we're going to have to grow the economy. Since the unification of government, we've had over $5 billion in economic investment in this community, private investment. Just in the last 4 years alone has been $2.8 billion of that, because we have an engine that's working and our community is growing. We've created in the last 4 years over 11,000 jobs, and not just any jobs, but jobs that are 16% above the state average. Kansas City, Kansas is the top job producer in the entire state and continuing to grow. And that's because we have an economic engine that is moving well, and frankly, because of the unified government working so efficiently to move us forward. But we have to continue that investment, and we have to continue that investment in all parts of our community. Village West is terrific, and the investment continues there. But we've seen tremendous investment in Fairfax, tremendous investment in Rosedale, and tremendous investment now in midterm in the Turner School District with Amazon. Moving that investment around and creating jobs across our community, the biggest challenge we have is connecting our citizens to these great jobs. We know that the unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We also know in our minority communities it's double the rate. And we've got to address that by connecting our citizens to the great jobs that we have. So economic development is fundamental because we grow the value in the city and it brings down everyone's tax burden. The third area is addressing blight. The blight primarily in our eastern part of our community, primarily by absentee landlords. For every one good absentee landlord we have 9 deadbeats who are sucking the life out of our community. We've got to address the blight in our community. We have 4,500 abandoned houses, 6,000 vacant lots. And we created an aggressive program called SOAR, which is Stabilize, Occupy, and Revitalize, that's aggressively addressing the blight issues in our community, getting people back on the tax rolls. We had a 7% delinquency 2 years ago. It's down to only 5%. Boy, that's a 30% improvement just in 2 years in reducing tax delinquency, which reduces the tax burden on everyone. When we grow the value of the housing units and the properties in the eastern part of the city, it balances out the value and reduces the tax burden on the rest of the community. The fourth thing we need to do is we need to control costs. I tell everyone, if we had a printing press in the basement of City Hall, like they have it in Washington, D.C., where you can just print all the money you want and you don't ever have to balance your budget, it'd be a lot easier. But we actually only get to spend money once. If we get $1, we get to spend the dollar once. And investing that money wisely and strategically is very important, and controlling costs. Public safety is our top priority. It's 60% of the money that we spend. And we have done studies. I've initiated studies in all three of these, police, fire, and sheriff, to make sure we're being as efficient as possible. And we've done tremendous investment. We've replaced every patrol car in the fleet. All 100 patrol cars are brand new. We've replaced every ambulance in service in the last 4 years, and half of the fire trucks. We've also committed on the jail side to build a new juvenile facility, which I'd like to talk about later, to break this pipeline of high school to prison, but to give our families an opportunity to turn things around in a state-of-the-art facility that provides wraparound services. But controlling costs, eliminating blight, investing in the community with economic development, and reducing the mill levy through sales tax, this is the plan that's going to continue to move our city forward. It's been very successful the last 4 years, and I'd be honored to have an opportunity to serve 4 more years to continue this moving forward.
Senator Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Bland. Thank you, Mary Rupert, for that question. And I will not take unlimited time to respond to what I believe is the question, and let's rephrase it once again. If I understood correctly, the question is not necessarily our platforms, but how do we differ from each of the candidates here? Is that correct?
On the issues.
On the issues. Thank you, Mary Rupert. You know, listening to the three who've spoken so far, and probably what Commissioner Alvey will say, we probably don't differ too much. I want to encapsulate that which brings us together on the issues that we can all embrace. Listening to especially Ms. Witt, Mr. Jordan, I could almost agree with practically everything that they said, and certainly if I'm the one who emerges as the candidate of change, because I honestly believe this is almost between those who have established a name in getting things done or in being elected. I can certainly assure those who don't advance that David Haley will be their candidate to bring about the change that I think all of us so earnestly want to see. I can say that, and each of you who know me or those who followed me for these 20 years, 20 plus years that I've been elected, each time with increasing number, because I work together to find compromise. Compromise in the legislature has meant that as the only Democrat in the Republican-controlled legislature, I've passed bills working with my colleagues, finding ways, as I hope to as mayor, among what is now a very fractured county commission. I'm going to work with the voices of the people, the elected in-district and at-large commissioners, and I differ from, I think, those who are currently in. Open admission, full disclosure, I voted for Mark Holland last time for mayor. I voted for Mark Holland 4 years ago to be my at-large district commissioner, which he abandoned midterm and did not have a seat filled for 2 years. And I have much of the faith still in Mark's ability. I voted for Dave Alvey. I voted for him because he was an agent for change on the BPU. He pledged many things that after he was elected and became chairman of the board went unrealized, unrecognized. I listen very carefully to what people say, but as someone who has to be accountable and has been accountable to a growing constituency, and obviously concerned that if I'm not in the general, I may have to choose between one of them again. I like to see that accountability, and I differ because I have been accountable. I do get things done in the fashion of working together and pulling people together, and statistics are very beautiful things to go down, but the reality of it is when you look at how people are feeling, how people are living, how we're a tale of two cities. How many of you are sitting in the suite out at the soccer stadium or at the T-Bone Stadium with security sitting around you there and enjoying the largesse of this city, while at home people can't pay their utility bill because of that city's section that the BPU sends to the UG, and the UG pretends that we're lowering our mill levy on our property taxes. It's disingenuous. It's beyond that. It's irritating. And I will reflect and won't play games, as I have not played games once elected time and time again, with the realities, the harsh realities that too many people we vote for, that we count on, to do the right thing when they get to the BPU, to do the right thing when they get to City Hall, forget that they promised to do. And I say to Ms. Witt and Mr. Jordan, especially, I certainly hear you. And if I'm the one to carry your message forward, you can count on me to do that. And I say to those who have heard their voice and understand their issue too, that that is the difference, the big difference. I deliver when I'm elected. I have delivered when I'm elected. And I hear and remember how I got there.
Thank you, Senator. Now, David Alway.
Well, I suppose I'm going to begin by defending my record at the BPU because my name and my family's reputation is important to me, and I take exception to the fact that someone can insinuate that I made promises to be a certain kind of person, a certain kind of leader on the Board of Public Utilities, and I did not fulfill that. And so I challenge Senator Haley to identify specifically those things in ways in which I have failed the public. And if you cannot do that, you should not make those insinuations. Frankly, it is unfair. I don't accept it. But I'm going to move on. I would say this. None of us gathered here today disagree that we must reduce taxes and improve services. The fundamental promise of government, is to provide good quality services at the least burden to the people so that we can grow our families, we can grow our neighborhoods, we can grow our community, and we will grow our city. It's not going to grow because we bring in all this outside development. It is welcomed, it is helpful, it has generated income, additional income for the city. But the fundamental promise has to be fulfilled to always improve services. And one of the first things we must do, one of the first responsibilities, is not to waste money. And so I'm going to suggest that burying infrastructure along Leavenworth Road, which imposed an additional $5 million of cost on BPU ratepayers and UG taxpayers, is not a priority. It is not needed. You and I can name probably 100 projects in this county that need $5 million worth of attention and that should have been spent there rather than burying electrical infrastructure. You and I could probably identify 100 other projects in this city that needed $250,000 a year in additional attention instead of being spent on a security detail for the commission, but used primarily by the mayor. You and I could probably identify 100 projects around this county that deserve much more attention than bailing out the T-bones. Folks, it's as simple as that. There are certain things we must do and certain things we must not do. What I believe separates me from others is that I like to cut through the crud, cut through the nonsense, identify the real problems, and I'm committed to it. And moreover, to really affirm the goodwill that is present in all those who serve in the public and to draw that forth so that we can identify and work together to solve problems. And so what I would like to end with is this. The first and foremost promise of government is to provide good services at the least cost. And so we are now promised a 2 mil tax reduction. And as Mayor Holland mentioned, it says we're not going to do this like they did at the state. We're not going to panic and just not have enough money. And yet 2 weeks ago, Unified Government Department heads received an email at 3:30 in the afternoon instructing them to reduce their budgets by 2.5% by noon the next day. How does that happen? They had submitted their budgets in April. They were promised that that money would be available to them going forward for the next budget year. And they were given suddenly 21 hours, actually less than 21 hours, to come up with budget cuts. That doesn't make any sense to me. That says to me dysfunction. That says to me, we don't really know what we're doing. We're going to grab this extra money so now we can promise mill reduction. If property tax reduction was part of the plan all along, it would have been communicated to department heads long before they even start, or as they started their budgeting. That seems to me the way it should work. Look, as I said, I get passionate when I feel that something is being said that is not accurate. It needs to be called out. I'm going to suggest this, that this community, we understand what we must do, and we all have good desires. No one on the commission, no one on the BPU board, none of our community leaders are of ill will. We disagree about how to get there. But I know from my experience, and what I've done is, all of my professional experience has been about how do you make something better. As Dean of Students, frankly, my job was, how do I make a school environment better for students so they can be successful? When I got on the BPU, how do we improve the BPU so they can serve the needs of the community? When I've been on economic development finance, that's what I've done. Ask the right questions so we can make sure we serve the community. That's who I am, and I just simply ask you to ask others who know me to let them give you their measure of me. It is what it is. I can't hide it, but I challenge you, if you can point any time, any place where I have misused my authority or forgotten the individual citizen, then point it out and we'll have a discussion about it. If not, please don't insinuate that. Thank you.
Now we'll move to our next panelist, Edgar Galicius from Central Avenue, and he will start the questioning with David Alvey.
I'm sorry, can I ask for a point of order, please?
Yes.
We were told at the onset that this was not a debate, that we had timeframes that we needed to stay inside of. I'm not protecting anybody, I'm simply stating that if we are going to be held to a standard of not attacking one another and not speaking the words of truth out loud, then that should be stated rather than, I'm sorry, I find it kind of offensive that there was no time limit set. I know I was led to believe, or I believed that there was a time limit on the answers that was not clearly stated at the beginning of the questioning. And we certainly have some debating going on, which I'm not against, but that's a different format. So I would like clarification on that, please. And if that is going to go on, then hey, I'm in, let's roll. Because Lord knows I'm tired of hearing that I'm the angry black woman when y'all got some angry white men up here. So if being an angry black woman is acceptable, I want to roll with it too.
Plus, I went second. I didn't get to take a shot at anybody, so.
I'm just saying, if we're going to play fair, this is the problem with Wyandotte County, these double standards that we're all asked to participate in, and I personally will not be participating in that tonight. We have a double standard. You all just saw it, and I am calling it out because that's what I do.
Let us move ahead.
How, can we get clarification first, please?
What I said before was that this is not a debate and we need to focus on the issues, period. Edgar?
All right, then it's on.
It's not really clear.
Let's go.
In order to gauge the welfare of the low moderate income citizens, we know that low income citizens have incomes below 50% of the area median income, while moderate income citizens have incomes between 50% and 80% of the area median income. In order to understand your vision or strategy regarding the needs of the low and moderate income community, please explain your take between gentrification versus community revitalization.
And we'll start with David Alvey. David?
Well, lucky me. So actually, I've lived in many different metropolitan areas that experience gentrification. So I'll point to, for example, my time in St. Louis, and I was part of a community organization that as gentrification happened in this neighborhood, they were bringing in new retail. In fact, actually a new grocery store, and the residents who had been there for decades were beginning to feel they were being moved out, just kind of pushed out. They could not compete with the prices that were being offered. A lot of these folks were living in rental houses, and this was their neighborhood, but they did not feel like they could remain there. So one of the things, you know, in a way, you can't stop that, but what you can do is provide a bridge. And so what we really worked to try to do was, for those folks who lived in the neighborhood, we acted as a conduit for those who were doing the hiring. So for instance, we conducted some training sessions. The grocery store chain allowed us to interact with the community, work with the community to, first of all, recruit people who were looking for jobs and to provide some training. We did a lot of interviewing, kind of pre-interviewing for the company. And so we were able to get the folks who lived in those neighborhoods jobs in that area. You know, what ends up happening, unfortunately, is the poor always get displaced. You know, I wish there were a magic solution to that, except this. There's no magic, it's just hard work. You know, the poverty level for married couples across races is pretty much the same. And so, to me, a solid marriage is one of the best ways to prevent poverty. And also, one of the primary ways, obviously, is education. And then, even given those things, folks have to have access to jobs. And if the jobs are not in that local community, in that area, they have to be able to get transportation to it. So again, there are lots of different things that have to be addressed with that. But it takes a community effort, community commitment, and it can't be just once and over. It's got to be continuous. I'm not sure I answered your question, though.
Okay. Senator Haley?
And I'm not sure that the question is easy enough to answer. There are sociological studies in various parts of not only our, well, some people call it a melting pot. I call it stir fry. I mean, we have individual communities that have different elements that, when stirred together, have their unique cultural and social flavors, with not necessarily losing those in a meltdown, if you will. So in this stir fry of a community that we call our home here in Wyandotte County, and as one who has represented probably the most income and socially diverse state senate district, or 80,000 or so people in the state, I look at the communities that I have represented, that I do. I've got in my district, for example, West Height and Quindaro, and where Indian Spring was, and parts of Central Avenue and parts of Minnesota and downtown. And I've watched things happen in part of my district at Strawberry Hill, where there has been, or there is, an urban renewal of sorts, a gentrification, if you will. And knowing that it's not just a byproduct of a change in income, but a change of attitude or of perception. Do we feel safe in the community? Are we accessible through transportation, public and private? Are there economic opportunities? And I've watched, more importantly, Edgar and others, I've watched as Kansas City, Missouri has gone through, or is going through, a similar transmogrification, a change of people and places. Some of us remember when the city market area was a slum. Some of us can recall when power and light did not exist. Now we look at the lofts that are coming in, certainly not only at City Market, but I remember when I only would go to the West Bottoms, to the haunted houses. And now watching the growth, phenomenal growth of the Crossroads, and seeing that, and having KC Mo Urban Envy, my pledge or my desire is to see the main corridors of our street changed in one term. If I'm the new mayor, take a snapshot of how growth will take over the course of the first term, the 4 years, changing again how we spend our money. Some want further tax reduction, but on that $100,000 home, saving that additional $40 in property taxes, as opposed to turning it back into a means by which we can grow the corridors and move them in a positive way that draws people to want to not only live, shop, bring their families there, but feel safe, as has been and will be done or is happening already in certain parts of the area. Finally, speaking of the modifications, I had a friend come in who was in economic development who's from the West Coast, from California. She had never been, she had an appointment at City Hall in economic development, and I picked her up at KCI. I was saying, you know, I'm thinking I might run for mayor. She'd never been to KCK, long story short. We came past the Argosy, drove through Fairfax, the most direct route to City Hall, and came down 7th Street. And it was a straight shot. And she said to me, she said, this is kind of, and she would later see Village West. And she said, you have a tale of two cities here. The communities are almost stark in the difference between them. It's almost as if redlining has occurred. What is leadership doing about that? And I said, you know, that's one of the reasons I'm thinking that I would run for mayor. That was before I decided, and we're still in the legislature, to bring about that change. We're mindful of the disparities, not only in lifestyle, but to say in one county that depending on your zip code, that 20 miles difference would be, I'm sorry, that 6 miles difference could be the difference in your longevity. That the lifespan, according to a report that the Wyandotte Health Foundation brought most recently at HNMA at a meeting of a neighborhood association, 20 years difference in lifespan in Wyandotte County, in one county, based on the opportunities and what you have access to and the lifestyle that you live within a 6 mile radius, and that is discernible, but it's also deplorable. And I'll work very closely to find out what those sociological factors are, to look at best practices, and to ensure that we bridge that gap.
Thank you. Mark Holland.
Well, I want to start by saying I'm proud to be in a community that values the poor and is not simply looking to push people out and simply trying to gentrify and move new people in. We've seen that in city after city, and it's a crisis in many urban areas where people are simply getting priced out of their homes. There are several layers to this. Obviously, education is a big component. I'm very proud of our 4 public school districts and our 1 private school district here. We have great education in Wyandotte County, and making sure that kids have an education when they're coming out of high school, if they're either college ready or they're career ready. And I think our school districts are doing an outstanding job, and we need to continue to support them in every way we can to make sure they continue to be successful. And we need to connect people with jobs. We need to connect people with jobs that give them a path, not simply minimum wage jobs where they stay in a rut and can't get out of it. The myth of the poor is that they're not working. That is not true. The poor are working very hard, working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet without benefits. We need to have quality jobs where people can raise their families. The other challenge we have is when we get the education right and when we get the job right, many times people are taking their first paycheck and they're going to live somewhere else because much of the housing in Kansas City, Kansas is affordable, but it's not quality. And we need to look at quality housing and mixed income developments. There were generations in this country when we simply stacked poor people on top of poor people, out of sight, out of mind, and then the rest of the country went on without access to education, without access to jobs, without access to transportation. We need to, when we think about new housing developments, particularly in our urban areas, we need to look at housing areas that are mixed income, where some of it is full price and some of it has reductions on it, so that people can live there. Everything we need to do needs to be transit-oriented development. We need to put our new developments on the bus lines so that people have access, again, to education and to jobs. All of that ties together. We have some great historic neighborhoods, and one of the things we need is we need our neighborhoods' values to continue to go up, so as the value goes up, we can bring the mill rate down. But we're going to do this by working in a coordinated effort. And the efforts that we've been working on for the last several years, we have great partnerships with the school district, the workforce partnership that's actually centered out of this community college, in partnership with Wyandotte Economic Development, the unified government, the state. We have a workforce partnership that's working very hard to make sure people have educational opportunities and job opportunities to put people in place. This recent opening at Amazon jobs aren't where I want people to end up. But it is where I want people to start. They start at $12 to $13 an hour, which is half again the minimum wage. Starting at half again the minimum wage, and then Amazon has built classrooms into that new building where they'll literally pay 95% of your education for an associate's degree while you're working there. For people entering the market, this is a great opportunity not only to start a job that's paying better than a lot of the jobs around, but is offering a pathway to a new education and a real career. That is so important. We did 8 different, with Wyandotte Economic Development, the Unified Government, the Community College, we reached out and did 8 different job fairs with over 1,000 people from Wyandotte County attending, and 40% of the applicants for the jobs at Amazon were applied for by folks from Wyandotte County. That's a huge step in the right direction to make sure our folks are getting these jobs and have a path beyond a minimum wage job or even a better than minimum wage job onto a full career. That job component, that educational component is critical, and creating the housing environment where people want to live. I say all the time, everyone deserves to be proud of their neighborhood. Nobody wants to drive home to a neighborhood that has conditions in it that everyone wouldn't want to live in. And a lot of times people feel trapped in their neighborhoods because they're just not nice and they can't afford to go somewhere else. Every neighborhood, whether it's low income, middle income, high income, needs to have the kind of services, the kind of infrastructure, and the kind of quality that people can afford and they can be proud of. That's the direction we're moving, and that's the work that we've done in the last 4 years, and the work that, frankly, we need to continue aggressively, because this city has a history of valuing folks who are low and moderate income, and we need to continue that tradition and help people move into a sustainable career.
Okay. Keith Jordan.
Okay, to answer your question the best that I can, I'm not going to make a lot of words and sentences and that stuff because everything so far has sounded about the same, no matter what has been said. And that we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this. Well, the truth is we need to be leaders, and the community helps the community. There's a lot of people who run their own businesses out of their own basements, out of their own garages. We've got all these empty buildings. You go down through the Argentine, down Strong, look at every single one of those buildings, empty. If we can get people to put their businesses in there, they're going to grow their business. They're going to hire people in the community. The community's going to start building up money that way there. We need to be the ones to heal our own community. Everything that's been said so far, education, this, and this, is all roundabout answers to go and make you forget about what the real problem is. Thank you.
Janice Webb.
Gentrification was embraced in Wyandotte County. It was simply given a different name. It was called eminent domain. That is where our big, wonderful racetrack is right now. They called it eminent domain. They came in, moved the folks that lived there out, and took it over and made great money, priced it outside of what the community could afford to pay. That's the bottom line. That's what happened at the Legends. That's what happened at the NASCAR. And that's what is still happening. Now, we want to call it gentrification and be offended by that term. Well, you first. You stop first. This community needs attention personally. I shudder to answer, honestly, because if I say what I truly feel, then you all are going to think I really am the angry black woman, which I am, and that's because I am you. I pay these taxes. I bear these burdens. If I told you, I'm just going to say it, if I told you that because your child, because you choose to live in Wyandotte County, your child is times again more likely to die than if you moved 10 miles to the west, even to the south or to the north, what kind of leader would I be to expect you not to pack up and leave? I will tell you, if you have a child and you live in Wyandotte County, it breaks my heart. I want to help you move your child to a better environment until I can be elected mayor and ensure that we are focusing in on the people that build this community, the people that we're asking to stay in this community. You see, until we stop the spending in this community, there will never be anything remotely close to a balanced budget. I can save you about $6 million the minute you elect me. The $5 million that's being buried along Leavenworth Road, the super duper mayoral car that's driven by our current mayor, the $90,000 that went in to put a security system in his home to protect him from your bad children who are that way because they live in 6610 something. How do we need $1 million in protection surrounding our mayor? I can save you money. You want to talk about gentrification, that's it. He has moved himself out of the community and moved security into the community to protect him from you. I see that as gentrification. What we need to do in our community is focus on the people, to focus on the needs, to focus and hear what the actual people who have been called ghosts are asking for in this community. We don't need to do a survey. We don't need to have a partnership with somebody coming in from the outside to say this is how the people in this community feel. We've said it for ourselves. If I were to ask any of you out there what you need, you would say a reduction in taxes so that you could continue to live your life, so that you're not choosing between BPU, which, if God bless his heart, Mr. Alvey said, and he welcomed this, that if somebody had a reason or something to challenge his character, I have one. When you have BPU's leadership telling you they do not care about the people in this community, that is your problem. BPU and the unified government are the same entity, people. They are one and the same. What we have here tonight is a marital dispute. I personally don't want to be an award in a divorce. I want to get what my tax dollars are paying for, which is to be heard, to be seen, and to be represented. I think that is fair for our community. Mr. Alvey asked if anyone could show reason or give examples of a lack of character. I called him because I had a problem with a riser falling down. I explained to Mr. Alvey that it was quite a problem for old people, because he told me in order to fix my problem, I had to go up these stairs, I had to go take a money order and go through all of these changes in order to fix this problem from a storm. Mr. Alvey informed me that if the old people or the handicapped people, because that's specifically what I asked him, couldn't do it, then they didn't want the power. If they wanted it, they would find a way to do it and pay for it. I'm sorry, that to me is perfect description of BPU. If we are sitting here, I'm telling you that there is a lack of character in our leadership. That is my direct quote, because I feel that when they make promises to you and they do not keep them, at some point it becomes a lie. It's no longer a promise, it's a lie. I'm asking you to elect Whit. I have every intent on bringing wonderful economic growth into Wyandotte County, and that growth will start where you stand. An arts and cultural entertainment district would be wonderful. It would be comparable to that gentrification that happened in Kansas City, Missouri, that brought in power and light. We can do that in Wyandotte County because we have so many empty buildings in the downtown area. The Fringe Festival is looking for somewhere to come. We have an opportunity to bring them across for arts and culture, something that our youth can embrace. We talk about jobs in Wyandotte County, but our youth have no jobs. They can't go out to the Legends and get a job. They're not hireable because our mayor has just informed you again that they don't qualify for the jobs that are brought here. We talked about all these jobs that have been brought to Wyandotte County, But I will tell you that those jobs are a myth. They are smoke and mirrors. Those jobs come already pre-filled. They are not jobs that are being brought to Wyandotte County for you to work. They are deals that are made to bring those businesses to Wyandotte County. And your tax dollars pay for them to come here. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna take my time since that's apparently the way we're going. We need to provide Bonner Springs and Edwardsville with better service overall. They also pay taxes into Wyandotte County. I'm saying that we need to hear our people, we need to acknowledge our people, and we need to behave like our people are paying the taxes in Wyandotte County. Gentrification, I think we need to de-gentrify City Hall.
Now we'll go to our next panelist, Elnora, and she will ask a question, and Janice will respond first.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a question or issue of equality and representation. People of color comprise over half of the population in Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, and yet even with the creation of a panel to discuss and make recommendations to increase the number of fire and police employees from this target population, no significant increases have been made. Do you know the reason? And if you do, what are your solutions?
Janice?
I do know the reasons. The reasons are lies. Folks are more than happy to tell a lie because you all are more than happy, we are more than happy to forget what they said by the time the next election comes around. How do we stop it? Change. You vote with. Vote with. I'm not gonna lie to you. I will tell you the truth even if it hurts us both, and we can figure it out together. First, we have to stop the spending. We have to stop the bleed of the spending. We have how many officers, though, keep in mind that right now our current mayor is dragging around police officers, taking them off the beat on your tax dollar for personal protection. As he described, he wants to be like Sly James in Kansas City, Missouri. The police put him to bed at night and wake him up in the morning. That is a direct quote from him, put in Mary Rupert's paper, I believe. How do we change that? We change the acceptable norms of our leadership. We put a regular person with excellent credentials, by the way. Anybody that wants my resume, I'll be happy to provide it. To bring hospitality and service into this community, to rebrand this community as a community for the people. We stop the useless spending on things like hundreds of cameras for their uniforms, for every person, cameras, right? I'm less concerned with cameras than I am concerned with having enough safety officers on the street to take care of not only themselves, but our people as well. Public safety is the top priority, but our leadership has shown absolute disrespect for our public safety, even at the funerals. How do we fix that? It doesn't matter if they're black or white. It doesn't matter if they are in blue. Everybody deserves to be respected. Everybody deserves not to be lied to. And our leadership continues to lie and make empty promises to get elected, and we keep electing them. How do I see to solve that? We need to employ the people who are employable. If someone is eligible for a job, we give it to them. If they are not, we don't. But if you are standing in the way of fair jobs with nepotism and other games that are played inside of Wyandotte County, then you stand in the way of equality, crossing all of the racial barriers. I think it's doable. I was a candidate for fire, personally. This has been back in 94. I was a candidate for fire. I would have been the first black female on the fire department. I chose not to accept that job, though I was qualified, because my husband asked me not to. I think that the most important thing that we can do as a community is become one, is to stop separating ourselves into districts by colors, by zip codes, by representation. When someone says the Northeast, they immediately think black. When someone says Piper, they immediately think white. I am done with that concept. It is unfair. It is inappropriate. White folks live downtown in the Northeast just like they live out west. To fix it, we have to create a more hospitable environment among us. But when our commissioners are setting fights between us by the district, by our needs, we are fighting for crumbs, and race becomes an issue. I think that we need to dispel the argument of district and unify our city. And if doing, I think we start with with being honest and just truly stopping the lying. I was at the meeting where Mr. Holland done this big presentation of what he was gonna do for the minorities, and he was gonna get them so many jobs at the fire department. But those numbers have yet to change, as Elnor said. How did that happen? Somebody lied.
Thank you. Keith Jordan.
Okay. The answer to that is easy. It is nepotism. And I know that from personal experience. For 10 years, close to, I was a volunteer firefighter in Edwardsville. I was more than qualified. I tested at least 3 to 4 times with the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department. Never got on. I came close. I'd get to the interviews. But then I'd look, who did they hire? Guy's got a brother, a dad, uncle, brother, dad. I was more than qualified than any of those guys. Okay, I take that back. A few of them was more qualified than me. But still, the point was, at that point, I was doing it for close to 10 years. I knew what was expected of me. I knew what to do. And these were young kids just out of EMT class, walking right in and getting the interviews because daddy was on the fire department. That's the biggest problem we have with our fire and police department. Now, as far as when it comes down to you talk about racial equality in both of them, and which has not been met. My belief is, though, it doesn't matter what race you are. What matters is how qualified you are for that job. Because, as I said, I was in Edwardsville for 10 years. There were a couple guys down there who I really didn't feel safe with going into a burning house with. And I didn't feel safe to be with them, so we're not going to be as effective. If the people that are saving you, rescuing the community, if they don't feel safe, you're not safe. So we need to get out of the nepotism, racial equality, and that in the fire and EMS departments. And when I say that, I mean qualifications. The most qualified person should be the one that holds that job. Like I said, if we want this community to grow, you need to feel safe. And if we're just hiring people because we need to fill a quota, we're not going to be safe. None of us will be safe. And that is where we're heading towards. Now, I don't know why we're focusing on the fire and police departments for the equality in hiring. What about the rest of downtown? Is it equal? No. Do you have to be as qualified to do some of the jobs downtown as you do to be a firefighter? No. Or to be a police officer? No. It takes special kinds of people to be fire and police officers. So we need the most qualified, but turn around and look at the rest of our city jobs. And let's start there for the racial equality in hiring.
Mark Holland.
Thank you. This is a very important issue to me. When I was first elected mayor, I watched a graduating class, 2 different classes, separated by about 6 months, of 42 firefighters walk across the stage, each of them qualified, good people, deserving of the jobs, no question. And we have top police, fire, and sheriff on the city every day, people who are passionate about keeping our communities safe. We have great people in our public safety. One of the things I noticed, though, when I watched the 42 firefighters walk across the stage is there was not a single African American and only one woman. And I wanted to know, how is it possible in a community that's as diverse as Kansas City, Kansas, that we didn't have the diversity represented on our fire department at graduation? So I started asking questions, and one of the things that puzzled me is when I looked at where they recruited, only 12 of the 42 went to high school in Wyandotte County. And only 6 of those 12, only half of them, came out of our public schools. So of our 8 public schools in Kansas City, Kansas that are producing great qualified individuals every year, they only produce 6 firefighters out of a class of 42. There's something wrong with the recruiting, hiring, and promoting of people in our community, because I believe this: if we will recruit, hire, and promote locally, we're going to see the kind of diversity we expect. We don't fill quotas. This isn't some 1970s effort. We're also not going to lower the qualifications. I'm a little insulted to think the idea that people of color wouldn't be qualified to do the job. Of course we have qualified people of color in our high schools who are ready to take these jobs if the recruitment, the hiring, and the promoting is on a level playing field. So I assembled a panel of 40 different people, chaired by former Commissioner Bill Miller and Reverend Jimmy Banks, co-chaired by those two. We had representatives, invitations to all 3 unions, police, fire, and sheriff, invitations to the 2 chiefs and to the sheriff, all sat around the table with our staff and with community members. Each commissioner was able to appoint a community member to look at this issue, and we spent 18 months studying the recruiting, the hiring, and the promoting of people within our public safety departments. Because if you look at City Hall as a whole, with the diversity that City Hall has, the Sheriff's Department matches that the best. The police department has about half that diversity, and the fire department has half of that. So clearly, the sheriff is able to recruit highly qualified people locally in our community. The police has had some success, not enough, and the fire department has not done as well as the other 2. So what can we do as policymakers to implement it? Because I don't want to just make change that's going to last for a year or 2. I want to embed a culture of change within our community and within the community to make it last. 18 months we evaluated this. We started this process 9 months before Ferguson. And one thing Ferguson told every community, that having a police, fire, and sheriff's department that reflects the diversity of your community matters. And if people didn't believe that before Ferguson, I think most Americans believe that now. We need to hire local people who grew up in this community, who know the community. Those are going to be our best police officers, our best firefighters, and our best sheriff's deputies. We went through this process, and that group made 30 recommendations to the commission. 30 recommendations to the commission to say, we need to do these 30 things to improve these areas so that our citizens have access. Look, the average firefighter makes $55,000 a year plus benefits. That package is nearly double the median household income in our community. Why aren't our kids clamoring for those great jobs? They should be lined up to apply for them. So we made changes to the cadet program in the police department. We created a cadet program in the fire department. The sheriff's department is working on a cadet program as well. And we have made a difference. So, Ms. Jefferson, I respectfully disagree. The numbers of recruits has significantly changed because we've focused more locally. I don't think we should hire everybody locally. I think we need to have some folks from outside the community for fresh blood coming in and out. But I think the percentage we had in that class of 42 of 75% from outside the community and only 25% from within, I think we need to reverse that. I think we need about 75% of the recruits coming locally and the rest coming from outside. I think we have an opportunity in this community to do a national model for how you recruit, hire, and promote locally. You're going to get the talent you deserve and expect in our public safety, and you're going to get the diversity that you expect in the community. And it's not quota-based, it's not numbers-based, it's qualification-based. We have people in this community who want a better career. We have great jobs. The unified government has no business asking other businesses to hire local if we're not going to set the example on how we do it. We're setting the example through public safety of recruiting in our high schools. working with District 500, Turner, Piper, and Bonner to identify students who would be great cadets, bringing them into the program, and making fundamental changes to the programs to allow folks to have every opportunity to get these jobs. We have an opportunity to change the socioeconomic reality in our community when the unified government leads with our own recruiting, hiring, and promoting. I do agree that City Hall has additional work to do because while we have diversity that's horizontal, we need more vertical diversity. That's clear, and it's a commitment that I've made that we need to continue to work on all levels of the local government to improve our city. We have 2,200 employees. More than half of those are public safety. We have a commitment to this city, and I'm very proud of the work that we did with the Department of Justice, and I'm very pleased with the results. It is going to take a number of years to see results, large percentage numbers to results, but it starts with the people who are applying, and it starts with the people we're hiring. That's the piece that's going to make the difference because you've got to bring qualified people in the front door. You're not going to find people in white shirts in the fire department who are people of color if you don't have anybody applying or being hired. And so we're starting that pipeline, and it's working, and we're committed to it. So excellent results in the 3 years that we've been doing this.
Senator Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Bland, and thank you, Honorable Jefferson, for that question. Diversity matters. Diversity in civic, higher, be it City Hall or County Courthouse, which of course we have unified together in their mission. Now, on our police and fire department, when we call 911 or sometimes 311, when code enforcement or the need to remove tree limbs occurs, diversity matters. And we are not some homogeneous community, a monolithic community, as I've seen in some parts of Kansas. Again, our county, unlike any of the other 104, is more diverse in its ethnic, social, and even its income levels than any other. And approaching how we are reflected as a county across the areas of inclusion is an issue that I've watched and heard the mayor struggle with and address. And this is something that I actually agree with Mayor Holland on. He has made some initial efforts to find a way to bridge the chasm. He did make a statement, I recall, pre-Ferguson, that there was a need for greater inclusion and enhancement of preferably our youth to look at our civic service jobs, and he moved forward in that direction. Let me say that I would like to continue and to expand his efforts. What I've done is to try to work with young people in our communities. In this very room, at this very podium, we had, and I've had for 6 years running, the Haley Youth Policy debates, sponsored by the community college and by Senator Haley, where all the high school students will come. I invite them to come and to discuss the issues of the day in open format. We give them and what I'm saying by that, and what that has to do with the question is, we're here and we find what is the key to encourage a child to look at wanting to be a police officer or to work in the fire department or to work at the BPU or any city or county related area. The goal should be, and the goal is, to keep employed and to have hired in our community our youth across the board. And from the standpoint of my record of trying to hear what they have to say and mindful of that and a respect for that workforce recruitment and that retainment, there are some issues that need to be met. I do think we need to continue those issues and to address them in a meaningful way. We can look at their resumes. I know that there's some exclusions that are brought beyond the nepotism that that's been spoken to, where you went to high school, who your parents were, that allow you to be a part of that. Certainly that still does exist sadly. But that's dying off, Elnora. I mean, we see that people are more and more qualified to hold the position independent of that. I think there's greater scrutiny. But we have to work, there's still a lot more to do to ensure that we have a workforce that's reflected all across the board of our county. And I do want to say that I would hope the initiatives that have begun will be continued by the next mayor, by whomever the next mayor is, to ensure that we have it reflected all across the board, and also not only in terms of racial or ethnicity, but regional parts of our county would be included as well.
Thank you. David Albee.
So again, we've received a lot of good input, a lot of good information on this very question. And I think it's important for us that what we have to all do is commit to this. This is an issue we just can't simply leave behind. We must continue to proceed on this. We must bring the best information, the best data we can to solving this problem. You know, I'm very proud, in fact, of what Don Gray, the general manager at the Board of Public Utilities, and the managers have done at the BPU. He has made a concerted effort that the people who work at the BPU reflect the diversity of this community. It has to be done, and we have to commit to it. And I think that what you've heard from all the candidates tonight is there is that commitment. I would just say that there's a process to move forward that we should do, and a process we should not follow. So I agree. If Mayor Holland sits on the stage and notices that there were no African Americans walking across the stage, that should be noticed. That should be a concern. What do you do about it? My understanding, the first action he took was to call the Justice Department to have an investigation. Frankly, I think that's a wrong way to go. I think you trust the people and you challenge the people who have the authority to do something about it, those who are responsible for do something about it. You give them the opportunity to solve the problem. You simply call in the chief, the fire chief, you call in the police chief, and you say, this is a problem. I want you to solve this problem. I want you in 6 months to come back to us with a solution to this problem. Come up with something that's going to work. If you don't come back in whatever time you give them, we'll have a different conversation. But what happens is, by calling the Justice Department, having them do this, it casts a shadow over the very people that we are entrusting to protect us. I don't think that's a good way to go. I think it's simply, it paints too broad a brush, and people will see there is a Justice Department investigation and draw conclusions that are unnecessary. I think it causes division. I think it causes alienation. In fact, I know it does. You know, there was, when they did the study, what they discovered was the problem was not hiring practices, the problem was recruitment. And the unified government had a recruitment program that was addressing this problem. It's called the cadet program. Mayor Holland and the commission voted to defund that. So by not funding that initiative, it created the very problems that he noticed, and then he called the Justice Department in. I think that's bad process. Finally, I know we're coming to the end of this. Sometimes I think I apologize for any way this evening that our emotions got the best of us. I think we need to see us working together to solve problems. And in this kind of context, I think we got off track. Frankly, I'm disappointed in myself, and I'm only speaking for myself. So I promise to continue to address these issues with one another to solve problems. Because frankly, whether I win or not is not the issue. The question is, who is going to help us move this community forward? You'll have to make that decision. And I promise to always work with others to do the better thing.
Thank you. Now we'll move into closing remarks, and please be limited to 2 minutes. And Cindy Cash will time you. So we'll start with David Albert. That's right.
All right. So in a way, I think I kind of summed up. I am confident in my ability to engage this community, to engage our elected leaders in identifying the problems that need to be addressed. I am committed to progress in this city. My goal, my vision for the city, I think our vision is really this, that when people do business in Wyandotte County, when customers come to the BPU, when taxpayers have a problem, their experience of the BPU, their experience of the city should be this, that, you know what, we really felt like we were listened to and cared for. We were valued. And they worked very hard to help me solve the problems I was having. If people have that experience of our schools, of our BPU, of our unified government, if they have that experience, that word will get out. And we will retain our children who grow up here, and we will attract residents, and the narrative, the story will go out, Wyandotte County's got it going on. Not because we're bringing in all this development, which is helpful, but because people believe, and they felt, and they experienced that they were listened to, they were valued, and they were cared for, and they helped solve our problems.
Okay. Senator?
Thank you, each of you again, and for the sponsors this evening. I am David Haley, and I would like very much for each of you to examine the record of those who are running and also those who have served. You hear what we're all saying this evening. You're taking your time, and those who are watching are listening very closely, hopefully, to who will lead us. Running very quickly through why I believe I should be. I'm born and raised here in Wyandotte County. I'm an attorney by training. I've gone to work in a law firm here and spent some time in the DA's office here in Wyandotte County. Worked at state, local, and federal governments. I have the leadership to bring this commission together, to bring a function for each of us to find growth in all quadrants of our county, as I've done in the legislature, where I've worked as the Democrat in the Republican-controlled legislature to pass more legislation than any other Democrat in the Senate. I'm committed with a strong passion to ensuring that there's equity throughout our county, that the voices will be heard. There is no minor voice. We are all a major voice in Wyandotte County. We are on the verge of living out our true greatness if we stop being placeholders and take those BPU city fees and take those Wyandotte County taxes and spread them in terms of growth and equity throughout. Before I came here tonight, I came from Parkwood Colony of the Concern. They insisted I talk. I said, I got to get to a forum. They said, this is where you started, David. Don't forget where you started. I was born in Parkwood. They said, you're going to address us before you go to wherever it is you have to go. And that's where I was. I haven't forgotten where I came from, and I won't forget that Wyandotte County, all of us, as your mayor, deserves to have our voices reflected and the hopes and dreams of this county grow unilaterally. Thank you again.
Mark Holland.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and all of those of you who have watched this on television or online later. This kind of dialogue is what's important, and this has really been the hallmark of my leadership style in my last 4 years. When we had new revenue, I immediately went out to a listening tour, engaged in 8 different listening tours, over 700 people, to get direct feedback from the citizens about how to invest the money that we all share together, and then to implement that. When we had great violence last summer, including the loss of 2 of our police officers, gathered together with the clergy, and the clergy said we should do some community forums. I did 4 community forums with over 300 people gathered to talk about how we can improve community police relations in Kansas City, Kansas. But what I discovered is that the number of people under 30 years old in that room, in those rooms, were not enough. And I'll just ask for a show of hands. How many people under 30 years of age here tonight? All right, sir.
Okay.
I will note my son's one of them. I brought one along. But listening to the young people, if we're not listening to the young voices in our community, we're not getting the message for the future. And so when those young voices were not at the community forums, I went to the schools. I went to all 8 high schools in Kansas City, Kansas. I went to Donnelly College and I went to the community college. An additional 700 voices at those pieces to hear what's happening. When we wanted to do a healthy campus downtown, we did a public listening session with over 300 people downtown. The Rosedale Master Plan, the K32 Master Plan have been models of getting citizens and businesses together to talk about what are your hopes and dreams for the community. The one we're doing this year is the Northeast Master Plan, to get the voices of Fairfax and businesses and the Northeast residents and the businesses together, the neighborhood leaders, to chart the future for the Northeast. This leadership of going out to the people, a community-driven agenda, is the way I have led and the way I will continue to lead, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to lead for 4 more years. Thank you.
Keith Jordan.
First off, I'd like to say that all my answers tonight have been shorter than everybody else's. Because I'm not going to BS you with stupidity, in my opinion. I'm going to talk to everybody eye to eye, face to face, and let you know this is how I feel. There's been people out here tonight that when they came in, they saw me earlier weeks driving around in my truck with my sign on the back of it, and I shook their hand and I talked to them one-on-one, face-to-face, and gave them the honest answers that I believe. I know that there's a lot of this and that as it goes with politics and that stuff. It's like, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's all cookie-cutter stuff. The same thing. We got to remember the people. It's the people of the city. That's what makes the city. I believe that whenever your fellow man falls, you should help him up. That is something that I practice in my daily life. Like I said, I do through the summer. I go to parks all over the city, both in Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri, passing out lunches to kids who wouldn't get a lunch that day. I do that. I've taught my son, who's 19, he does the same thing. That's why he became a Mason, and he also became a Shriner, because we are supposed to help each other out. That is the biggest responsibility that every human is supposed to oblige by. And tonight, as I said, my answers are short. If you have any questions about my views on anything, I will be standing right outside the door, and I will talk to each and every person. On my other job, I've talked to close to 25,000 people in one night. Is that a concert that had 55,000 people? But I will talk to every single person because it's about the people. Thank you.
Okay. Janice Witt.
Thank y'all for listening to me. Thank you for listening to all of us. But more than thanking you, what I really want you to do is I want you to remember. I want you to remember the promises and look at the results. Be honest with yourselves. Remember the words that were spoken to you during the previous elections. Check your checkbooks. Check your bank accounts. Check your children's grades and check the results. Go to countyhealthrankings.com. It will tell you how and why our community is rated the way that it is. What we do not need is more conversation. We need action. We need right now results. I heard a lot of commentary tonight that said, well, it took us 25 years to get here. Well, that tells us that whatever we did 25 years ago was the wrong thing to do, and it has never been corrected. So we don't need to continue that path. What we need are results that actually make a difference in our lives. There was a question asked by Ms. Jefferson, and that was a very valid question about why there is such disparity in the fire. And nepotism is a huge part. But another huge part of it is that so many of the black youth are felons in particular. In Wyandotte County, we have a pipeline from high school to prison. There is no pipeline from prison to the fire department or to safety in any way or any city employment. Nobody wants to be told so simply, you just simply cannot have a job because you made a mistake in your youth. The pretty words are smoothly said, and I'm not cool. I'm not cool. I am direct, honest, and precise. What do I believe in? No more monopoly.
Let's give all the candidates a hand.